here today to talk to you about the Comprehensive Planning and Performance Assessment System for UN peacekeeping operations, which we call the CPAS for short. And I just wanted to introduce those of us who will be speaking today. You'll be hearing from Uli and myself. We both work here in New York, but more importantly, we actually wanted you to hear from colleagues working in the field who are the ones who actually use this system. And so Daniel Meyer has joined us from the Peacekeeping Mission MONUSCO in the DRC. And we really hope to have Captain Nakombo join us, who works in UNDOF, which is the peacekeeping operation based in the Golan Heights between Israel and Syria. But they're rather busy at the moment. So she may even join partway through if operations allow. But if not, Uli, welcome. Uli will be presenting her slides for her. So if we can go to the next slide, Uli. Thanks. So I know there's a real mix of people here, both inside the UN and outside. Some of you are very familiar with peacekeeping operations, some aren't. So just to give you, for those of you who don't know, to give you an idea of the scope of peacekeeping, on screen you can see all our missions around the world, and the dates below them are the dates that they joined the CPAS. We had an incremental rollout that started in the Central African Republic in 2018, and a mission in Abyei was the last one to join in May 2021. And the reason for that stretched out period of rollout was for this very small event called COVID, which sort of interrupted things for a little while in 2020. And each one of these missions, they're very different in size and in complexity, and they all have different mandates handed down by primarily the Security Council, but the member states. So they're all doing different things. If we look at the next slide, I just wanted to quickly run you through the methodology of the CPAS. So it's an integrated planning and performance assessment tool, and it's basically aimed to make peacekeeping more effective at preventing and resolving conflict in order to improve the lives of the people who live in these countries or these areas. And what this slide shows is both the methodology, but also what the methodology generates, and then what that informs. So the methodology is based on international best practice, and it forms an iterative cycle of planning, implementing, assessing, and adjusting. And anyone who sort of works in the area of assessment, of impact, knows essentially this cycle. There's nothing, I don't think, revolutionary about it. What is different about it is that it's adapted to work in a peacekeeping context, an area that many people for a long time said was not amenable to having its impact assessed because of the complex and conflict environment that they take place in. And basically, CPAS strengthens mandate implementation and impact by enabling an improved understanding of the context through an integrated mapping process, whole of mission, meaning civilian and uniformed planning, which is heavily anchored in and highly responsive to changes in local context, and impact assessment, and then evidence-based decision-making to adapt and improve operations. And so what this methodology does, it generates a couple of key products. It generates a results framework, which really means an integrated whole of mission plan, which is incredibly important for especially large complex missions where different tentacles are doing different things at different times. And against that plan, data has been collated for the first time in a really coherent and centralized manner. Analysis has been generated against that data, infographics, and then recommendations to leadership, evidence-based recommendations are being made to improve the mandate implementation by the mission. And so what these products then inform is obviously decision-making by senior leadership in our missions, strategic communications and reporting, particularly enhanced reporting to member states, greater transparency there, and also feeding back in as part of the cycle into planning. And I think it's fair to say that CPAS has really centralised data in peacekeeping and really helped revolutionise the use of it, because missions have been very quick to grasp the utility of centralising, layering and triangulating data in order to strengthen their impact, but also show the impact that they're having, something that missions really struggled with for a long time. And so as a result of that, many missions also use the CPAS to store data that's not necessarily directly related to the CPAS, but they get the utility of putting it in the same place so that you can layer it and leverage it more. Can we lower the blinds for the people being completely blinded on the side of the table? Poor things. I think they expected to leave with their eyesight intact. So for example, we house the data collection for the global women, peace and security indicators. Thank you so much, Lebo. The gender team in peacekeeping is able to use that data to inform their work and their reporting, which is not directly related to the CPAS. So this is a data conference. So let me hand over to our colleague. Sorry, I didn't introduce him earlier, which is an enormous faux pas by me. David Wickland, who we refer to as our IT wizard, and he's responsible for building and running the platform which CPAS operates on. And he's going to explain to you how this works before we turn to colleagues in the field to explain how they apply that in real life. David, over to you.
Thank you, Kim, and good afternoon, everybody. So we'll dig a little bit more into the data side and a little bit more on the methodology too over the next few slides to drive home what Kim was speaking to. So broadly on kind of the data aspects of CPAS or some of our goals for data in CPAS is we want to harness the data that's available in missions, the information people are collecting to be able to assess how things are going, and improve operations going forward. However, especially if you were looking at the landscape 5 or 6 years ago, that was a very, very challenging task. It's not that there was necessarily a lack of data or information, it's just that the data was collected sort of haphazardly across the missions, which, as people may know, are kind of within themselves divided up into a multitude of different sections working on different activities. So there's civil affairs, engaging with civil society, political affairs, engaging in the political process, force, the actual military component, UNPOL, working with the police, UNMOS, doing mine action, DDR, demobilizing, everybody working on different things, all tracking their work in different ways, in different places, which makes kind of creating a whole of mission approach very difficult. So the goal, for the system was to try to centralize that as much as possible and get things into a place where that data can be collected and kind of compared amongst itself and used, in various ways to support the operations of the missions. So that the sort of three-pronged approach shown on the right side of this slide is first, looking for authoritative sources and systems that exist in the mission and looking at those. Second, if they don't exist, creating a home for any extra homeless data in CPAS for the mission to collect. And then collecting the more qualitative analysis and assessments from the actual people doing the work in the missions to get their more qualitative view on how things are going. So if we jump over to the next slide, I don't know if I can control them yet. We have kind of a few of the high level advantages that we've seen as CPAS has rolled out. So as I mentioned on the previous side, really trying to avoid and breaking existing silos of data and collecting things in a way that they can be put up against each other and used to back each other up. And then working with different systems and trying to connect all of the various things that already exist. Once that's kind of done, that allows us to do kind of the next few bullets, use all of that information for assessments and work within the mission, and also for external products to highlight to member states, to the Security Council, to any external partners, the work that the mission is doing, and kind of really drilling down on what's working and what's not working, and what people do. All of this sort of together, creates kind of a envisioned high-level kind of impact data set for the missions for how things are going. And that, we can jump over to the next slide now, is sort of the basis for the CPAS system. The system itself, as shown on this slide, is largely divided up into three sections. There's a data collection aspect, which is shown on the left. And so that's actively kind of collecting all of the information that's collected, the results frameworks, which I'll talk about a little bit in a bit, all of the indicator data that I've mentioned so far. All of that either gets pulled automatically from other systems or users go in and add it for their sections for each mission. The middle block is maybe the most visually appealing, is using all that information and putting it into interactive dashboards for kind of live analysis to go through any point in time and see kind of an institutional memory of what's been collected so far. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Both the qualitative and the quantitative side are kind of held and can be clicked through pretty quickly to drill down on any information that we're looking for. And then the far right is reporting. For people that are in the UN system, you probably know, and for people outside the UN system, you've probably heard that almost everything at the UN is done through reporting. So everything, I think, from our point of view, from a data collection aspect, needs to be able to easily feed into reporting in different work streams. So a lot of the work we put into it has been to make sure that all of the data collected can be exported to Microsoft Word and to various other reporting streams within the missions that we'll show in a bit. With that, I think we can jump to the next slide to talk about the dashboards a bit. So this is a video. You might need to click again to get it started. There we go. This is sort of our overarching impact dashboard for CPAS. So you can see at the top the intended impact. These are the kind of the high-level goals for the mission that it hopes to accomplish. And on the right side that's being clicked through right now is indicator data relating to that. So this is an example from MINUSCA, the mission in the Central African Republic. And you can see this is sort of signatories to their ceasefire political agreements and kind of the clashes and how that's trended over time. You can also drill down, as being shown now, to lower levels of the framework. So that top level is really the high level of strategic goals and mission. The intended outcome is more the stakeholder level. So looking at different information that relates to different stakeholders in the mission, CMOPS being kind of a local political group that missions work with. You can view the data in a bunch of different ways, copy it out directly to use in different reporting and things like that. And on the left side, which I touched upon a bit, you have more of the qualitative side of things. So here you have the most recent assessments from the mission for how this outcome is going. And below it, 2 recommendations for how things can be improved and any kind of status generally of how that recommendation has been adopted. I think we can jump past the output level onto the next video. This is a little bit more getting into the data analysis side of CPAS. So this is the indicator dashboard, which is, as opposed to the previous dashboard, which is very focused on that monitoring and evaluation methodology that I just walked through. This is more just showing the raw data in different ways that's coming in from different sources. So on this video, you'll see data being shown for UNFICYP, the peacekeeping mission in Cyprus, and showing data across the buffer zone between the Turkish and Greek sides. Data coming in from SAGE, which is an incident tracking system in CPAS, ACLED, an open source incident tracking system, incident tracking system in peacekeeping, in addition to CPAS data. And OCHA data coming, I think, courtesy of UNHCR on migration in the buffer zone. And you can look at it in a few different views, both on that sort of point map that was being shown earlier and the heat maps that are being shown. So these 2 dashboards make up kind of the core of the visual side, but we also make custom dashboards for different missions. And we use these dashboards. Now we can stay on the fact sheet slide. We use these dashboards to generate various mission products, such as these fact sheets. These are a few examples from MINUSCA, the mission in the DRC, UNDOF, the mission in the Golan Heights, which we'll talk more about in a bit, and MINUSCA, the Central African Republic. These have all been used for Security Council briefings to highlight kind of the state of affairs in the different contexts they operate in. Different fact sheets have also been used for briefing embassies, both internal reporting with the parties involved in the conflict, etc. So there's a wide kind of array of way that the data can be harnessed and used, and we try to support creating these products where possible. If we jump to the next slide, then we get into a bit of a demo on more customized dashboards for specific purposes. So the dashboards that were shown before, they exist for all missions. They're broadly available for peacekeeping staff to use to get the different insights available from the data. On this dashboard, this is specifically for MONUSCO, again, the mission in the DRC, and I'll be handing off to Daniel in a bit, and drilling into data on human rights violations. The larger peacekeeping missions do a lot of work to investigate and verify violations, and that data gets used in a lot of reporting in a lot of different ways. But previously, it was done in a bit of a ad hoc manner. There's a lot of kind of structured data collection, but not a lot of structured data visualization. So this was taking a lot of the data that they'd already collected and standardized and feeding it into interactive dashboards that can be used. And you can see various ways of visualizing the information, both the overall number of violations broken out in pie charts, and also these trend lines over time, where you can focus in on different regions, different actors, different actor types, different specific types of violations, any kind of drill down that you want within to get a better sense of kind of what's happening in the conflict and how things are changing over time. So here we're drilling down on two of the more active actors in the conflict, and you can see kind of their relative trends over time. There's a few other visuals that I think we'll click through. There's, in addition to these line trends, bar trends that are broken out, tree maps, kind of like rectangular pie maps, and different sort of comparisons between types. You can sort of compare the actors with types of violations, location with actors, etc. Basically, the goal of this being any type of analysis that you have to do on the data. There's kind of pre-generated charts available, including maps of several different types as well. These sorts of products are a little bit more customized, and lets you get a little bit more into the specific mission context versus the dashboards that I showed prior, which are more generalized for all missions. So we try to operate kind of at both levels, both at the mission customization and the overall view. Finally, just if you're wondering what this is meant to feed the monthly and yearly reporting for the Human Rights Office. They have sort of pre-generated charts that they use to highlight the situation every month, and this kind of automatically generates those, saves a lot of time in the reporting process. But overall, this is a quick run through of a bunch of the different products that we have and a bunch of the different things that they do. But for more of a detailed drill down into specifically MONUSCO, the mission in the DRC that's being shown now, I'll hand over to Daniel Meyer, who I think is also on the call, to talk directly to that, since he's live from the mission.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you also, Kim, for the introduction, and NYU and DPO for hosting this event. I'm Daniel Meyer, the Senior Mission Planning Officer. Greetings from Kinshasa. Good afternoon to you. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, just a few slides on MONUSCO to basically inform you a little bit about our experience with CPAS over the past few years. Just some key data. MONUSCO was established in 2010 following MONUC, which has been in the country since 1999. So we are hitting basically 25 years of presence in the DRC, and the mandate is basically focusing on the protection of civilians, on DDR processes, and on security sector reform as the main, so to say, mandated priorities. These are also reflected in our CPAS results framework with intended impact areas and outcome areas for which we collect data and analyze data. As Kim said earlier, CPAS was launched in 2019. It was a bit of a lengthy process in the beginning, and I think David used the term revolutionizing, so to say, data collection, because indeed we had data for the daily reporting, but we were not in a position to bring it all together in one platform. And as you can see, the size of the mission here, about 17,000 personnel. So there's a lot of, data actually that is collected, but indeed we were having difficulties bringing it all together. If you go to the next slide, I can also demonstrate the importance of data in ensuring coherence across the mission. Those of you familiar with the DRC would know that we talk about a pays continent, a continent country, so to say, with huge dimensions, and in the West, basically Kinshasa, the capital, where we have our mission headquarters. But the operations are taking place in the East, in the northern provinces of Ituri, North Kivu, South Kivu, and also, as of late, Tanganyika. So all of these operations, and I'm using a map here from 2019, documented, but it is quite important that we have the data readily available for the decision-making and the political engagements also in the capital. It is also important, and you see there an area in the center that is the Kasai region, where we have already left a few years ago. But there was a long debate about MONUSCO's transition and also the drawdown, the gradual and responsible drawdown of the mission. And that requires solid data, because we need to actually demonstrate that the situation has improved, and we can also inform the Security Council that we are ready to leave a place. It is also quite important to have the data available in our conversations with the government. And this is what I would call also the politics of data. Because in some presentations, you might hear that there are only pockets of insecurity, and basically it would be about time for the mission to leave. But with the data, we can also show that instances of human rights violations continue, or the humanitarian crisis is still to be addressed, and therefore it would be premature to leave a certain area. So this is just an illustration of the importance of data to ensure coherence. On this slide, basically we show you the products that David presented, but how we use it also at the mission level. If I just look at the three data and infographics that are illustrated here, you see on the left a heat map basically of security incidents that were recorded in a database called SAGE. And that is usually used for the daily reporting, but it is quite important to show over time the trends, and then we can also see the hotspots. So the darker, the more incidents that were recorded. In the middle map, you can see how the territory occupied by an armed group called the M23 has been growing over time. So with different color codes, we were showing how the area expanded, and we, basically mirrored it with the political timeline of regional engagements, what we call the Nairobi process and the Luanda processes. It also shows the deployment of a regional force in that area, and despite operations, and that is the next map, of armies from neighboring countries, in this case against the ADF armed group, we could see that despite military interventions, they were able to spread actually their presence in the eastern DRC, also going from North Kivu into the southern parts of the Ituri province. What that basically means is that in our recommendations to the leadership through our impact reports, we are emphasizing the need for dialogue initiatives, and also the fact that there's no military solution to a number of these conflicts, and we can overlay different, criteria here on those maps, and basically show also to the Security Council the nexus between natural resources on the one hand and the control of an area by an armed group, as well as also in terms of positive correlations to show where there are IDP sites, for instance, and where MONUSCO has been protecting civilians according to its mandate. Ultimately, we are trying to show with these trend lines that in an area where we are engaging stakeholders, where we are supporting also national institutions, we would see a reduction of human rights violations and an improving security situation. And that would then basically allow us to transition out of that area and withdraw from that area. And that takes us to the next slide. The transition planning is very much ongoing for some time, but it is quite important. And I'm coming back to the term of the politics of data. It is important that we are able to monitor how the situation is developing. And for that, we've been using a joint government United Nations transition plan that has been developed in 2019 and recently revised. And it contains core benchmarks and indicators that we have aligned also with our CPAS results framework in the mission. And now we can use that tool, quite frankly, to go even a level deeper. That is, the sub-provincial level at the level of the territories. And we have much more granular data that we used to have in the past to inform decision-making. For instance, we need to close a base in a given area, and we can show how the human rights situation, how the use of children in armed groups, how the humanitarian situation has been evolving over time, and what would be required, through the partnership with the national institutions and international partners in order to avoid a security vacuum following our withdrawal. So the data collection and the monitoring is quite important in this transition context. It also informs the reports of the Secretary General to the Security Council, and through the fact sheets that we showed earlier, the briefings of our head of mission to the Security Council and member states. The adaptation of the planning to the changing context is an important element that Kim had highlighted in her early slides. To complete the cycle, so to say, of CPAS, we are conducting impact assessments. We did just one last week with over 65 participants from all kinds of uniformed and civilian components of the mission. And that is what I call the democratization also of the dialogue within the mission, because we are breaking the silos, we are bringing people together, and we create a safe space for a discussion where you can also, question data, where you can also ask colleagues, according to this data set, do you think there has been an improvement in this area or not? And it also helps to go maybe deeper into the root causes of some of those problems. I give you an example: overcrowding of prisons over the past couple of years. Through the data and indicators, we can show that despite the efforts, there has been really no improvement in terms of the overcrowding of correction facilities in the DRC. But we understand better that there are structural reasons why they are overcrowded, and that could be linked, for instance, to corruption, because those family members with financial means can buy out their family members. So the overcrowding is not necessarily a problem as such of the institutions, but of the the behavior of those. And so the recommendation would be to get in touch with the Ministry of Justice, for instance, to address those structural causes. The trend lines have been mentioned already, and as I mentioned as well, we are now in a very important time life of the time span of the mission. The mission is drawing down now from Tanganyika. It has been drawn down from Kasais, and there might be other areas following. And this is quite important as we enter into discussions with the government, but also with members of the Security Council around mandate renewal that will take place on 20th of December. And we very much use also the data generated by CPAS for this purpose. And we can use also some of these graphs here that you can see to show which territory is improving and where we believe that maybe we can reduce the presence over time. And that then informs also the political engagement, both at the levels of New York, but also at the national level here in Kinshasa and at the provincial levels. With that, I hand over back to you, and thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So as Kim mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to present a little bit about UNDOF. You saw we won't go into as much detail as we had with Daniel, but we wanted to present the experience of UNDOF, which to talk about a different mission that also has been using the CPAS for a few years now, because we want to show how CPAS can be adapted and can be a useful tool as well for smaller traditional missions to demonstrate their impact and their utility they still have in their areas of operation after having been deployed for a very long time. So UNDOF, as Kim already mentioned, is located in Golan Heights between Israel and Syria, and is one of the oldest UN peacekeeping missions. We often refer to it as a traditional peacekeeping mission. As you'll see on the slide there, it is a lot smaller than MONUSCO, with only about 1,200 people deployed, and has a very specific mandate. CPAS launched in UNDOF in 2021 and has since been successfully adapted to, the mission has adapted the system to its particular needs and context. CPAS has also helped UNDOF collect its data in a centralized manner through the system that we presented and that David walked you through, and has helped the mission as well to present their impact to UN headquarters and to member states in a more impactful way. They have also generated several of the fact sheets that we've talked about as well from MONUSCO that help illustrate the mission's impact on the ground. CPAS has also been a useful tool for UNDOF to to integrate their work more effectively with their neighboring missions. CPAS has supported UNDOF in its coordination and cooperation with the other UN peacekeeping missions in the region, particularly UNSO in Israel, UNFICYP in Cyprus, and UNIFIL in Lebanon. These missions are closely interlinked by regional dynamics, and that's why the four missions have come together to look at how they can enhance their collaboration and their information sharing through the CPAS. They have agreed to use the CPAS as an exchange platform and to exchange information and analysis, and to facilitate the sharing as well as best practices and promote situational awareness in the region. This cooperation, as you can see on the screen, will have a series of benefits for all of the missions and is especially useful for a smaller mission such as UNDOF. This is a very quick overview, but we just wanted to show how the CPAS works both in missions as MONUSCO and UNDOF, which illustrates how it has been a sufficiently flexible tool to adapt to the needs of all missions, whether they are a big multidimensional with complex mandates or smaller traditional missions with more specific and static mandates that have been deployed over a long period of time. And with that, we've finished our presentation, and thank you for your participation, and open it up for questions.
Did I see questions appearing in the chat?
I was just going to change. Let me see.
So we have one question on reading social media sentiment, which I might ask David Wicklund to respond to, but I'll just check whether anyone in the room,
Hi, Ethan McLaughlin, UK Foreign Office. So one of the things within the new agenda for peace in terms of the references to data was around peace operations. And this has been, and I'm not somebody who works within this space normally, so it's really fantastic and really interesting to see kind of how the data is being utilized. And I guess my question then is for kind of all of the presenters is the reference to new agenda for peace is talking about fully leveraging. From my, uninitiated perspective, it seems you're really leveraging to quite a high extent at the moment. So I guess what could come next? And because obviously, it doesn't kind of go into great detail within the document, but it'd be really interesting to get your perspectives.
Thanks. Are there any other, maybe we'll just take because I know we're short on time.
Yeah, sure. Brittany Rosa from PAX. I was just curious about the data collection aspect. A lot of it said like coming from the missions. But what about where missions in countries that have full country mandates, but there are not always operations and a footprint in every single area? Where's the data coming from? And are you also using community level data, civil society data, or is this just solely from what is being collected directly by the mission? And who has access to the data? So there was a lot of mentioning of sharing across different platforms and across missions, but is this also accessible to SPMs and UNCTs for use in other aspects of peace building activities, or is it solely just for the missions themselves?
Great. That is a long set of questions.
Yes.
Fine. Thank you, Brittany. Anyone else? And anyone else online who'd like to pose questions in the chat or take the floor before we start responding? Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Miriam Sterling from NORCAP. I was curious about the linkages between CPAS and United Where and the other kind of systems like the MARA and how you integrate that.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. I don't see anyone else online. David, do you want to take some of the more data related questions first?
Sure, yeah. So I guess starting with the one in the chat on social media sentiment, it's come up before. It's something, especially I think some of the larger missions are really focused on right now is getting, looking more at social media to get a view of the disinformation landscape. I'll say it's kind of in nascent stages of being implemented. There's a lot of hurdles to get through to filter out the noise, to make sure that social media in different languages can be easily analyzed and kind of collected in a structured way. But it's something that the missions are definitely moving towards. But right now, it's fairly limited, the input that has in CPAS. But I think in the future it'll be greater. And let's see, the last question just on interoperability with other systems. United specifically, we work with the SAGE elements of that a lot. So SAGE is essentially whenever there's an incident occurs, an armed group attack, any sort of security incident, and in some cases activities as well, the mission will log that bespoke incident in SAGE. And in CPAS, we can use that to kind of aggregate up. So if we're looking for are the number of incidents going up and down over time, you can take sort of the monthly totals directly from SAGE, sync that automatically in, and then have that fill in your CPAS indicator. For other elements of United Where, there's a patrol planning element. There's some different kind of maps that we've worked with the GeoPortal a bit to incorporate as well. But they're largely separate. I think where there is overlap, we try to work with them, and in other places, there's not as much conceptual similarity. With Mara, also, that there's a little bit of overlap, but generally not so much. I think Mara, Nauticus, a few other systems, some missions may be drawing for them, but not all of them.
Great, thanks, David. Maybe did you want me to cover where the data is coming? Some of Brittany's questions, or?
So as far as the kind of access and where it's coming from, so yeah, most of the data is coming from the missions themselves. So staff in the missions reporting, There's a few indicators that are tied. I think IDPs and refugees are the main ones that are coming from other UN country team, mostly UNHCR, IOM, and OCHA. But generally, most of the data is coming from within the mission, and for each mission, only that mission has access to its data. There may be a few exceptions where, various interlocutors at headquarters may have access to a subset when it's relevant, but generally it's meant to be mission internal so that it can be kind of as, broad as possible without having to worry too much about political sensitivities of making it public or more broadly accessible. As far as SPMs go, I think I'll let Kim talk to that a bit. We're generally mandated to work with peacekeeping missions, so that's our main focus. But I think in theory, the system could also be applied to SPMs.
And maybe I'll pick up on the question from Ethan about sort of what next, which really traverses some of the other questions that have been asked anyway, which is for the CPAS, it's both up and down in terms of detail. So the approach to regional CPAS is something we want to move. We've trialed that in the Middle East, and we're very interested in that, in moving that to Africa next, where, you have a lot of conflicts that are crossing borders quite regularly. So we're very interested to see how that would go, and that's sort of an example of sort of going up. I mean, a massive aspect of CPAS is its ability to show trends over time, which is incredibly important for peacekeeping operations, where the change can be very slow and incremental, and peace processes can really take a long time. So the building up of data, I think, is really critical for that. And part of, what's taken time to get going is to have a reliable data set that you can really start to leverage. But also in terms of going down, picking up on some of the stuff that Daniel was talking about, we respond to the requests from the mission. So with the transition monitoring that's going on in MONUSCO at the moment, starting to build dashboards that actually monitor at the provincial level so that missions can really get this much more detailed perspective of what's going on. So it's both down, up and forward in a way. I mean, in reality, we're the largest central pool of data in peacekeeping. There are a lot of different tools that are in peacekeeping at the moment, or in the stage of being developed. And what we would like to see is the tools working more closely together to give a smoother sort of singular interface at the field level, so that the missions are really able to use these different tools to leverage the data. Because at the end of the day, there's really only one pool of data. And the different tools are pulling off it and sharing in different ways. But the customer experience, so to speak, at the mission level should feel really seamless. And I think that sort of speaks to your question too, Miriam, about the relationship, interrelationship with UnitedAware. And the great thing about this is all these tools that are being developed, we are all working together and really, I think, focused on trying to achieve the same end goal. For an entity like peacekeeping that really wasn't engaging with data, 5 or so years ago, we've come a remarkable long way in a short time. And I think realizing there was more data out there than we recognized, and putting it in a central place and really being able to use it in the way we are now, the options are really endless. But we'll take our lead from the field, because we're a very field-focused tool, and it really depends what they want to do with it and how far they think they can take it. I don't see any more questions online or in here, so I think, Thibaut, we have caught back up on time.
That's great, yeah. And any more questions in the room or comments? Anything else?
What a great way to end, giving that 5-year perspective and seeing that so much has been done.
Yeah.
It's really been, yeah. And not just with us, with other tools as well. But peacekeeping really had an allergy towards data in the past. And so it's really to have come around so far. And we're also, to be honest, looking at workplace transformation as well, like increasingly recruiting people in all sorts of jobs who are comfortable working with data, I think is just kind of the future way that we're heading, which feels quite old-fashioned to say in Google's offices, but we are catching up fast. So, yeah. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, David.
Thank you for lending me.
Thank you, Daniel. It's very late in Kinshasa. Poor guy. Yeah.
Just like 2 minutes before, so, but I hope you.
Lost in the
Oh, yeah.
2 minutes before. Yeah.